Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel with another tutorial video. First off, I would like to quickly mention that thank you to those who understood that I had to take a few weeks to finish some in real life stuff. But now I am back and we have a lot of videos coming out leading up to Elytrion and forward. So with that, let's jump into Charge Blade for those of you looking to up your game or learn it for the first time. So Charge Blade doesn't have too many attacks, so I'll briefly mention some basics and then we'll move on to the more important key tips and combos section. I'll discuss quite a bit of nitty gritty here for the Charge Blade and then we will end off this video with some jewels, skills, and build recommendations. Alright, so just starting off with some basic stuff. Charge Blade in application isn't as complicated as many make it out to be, but it does take some mastery of certain skills to make it an efficient weapon. As the name suggests, the strength of this weapon comes out from charging your weapon, and there's three aspects that you can charge: your sword, shield, and axe, each of which have a different playstyle and situation to be used. We'll start off here with the sword and shield since they kind of go together, and then we'll revisit axe mode in a little bit. So, as I mentioned, charging your weapons are key, and this starts by charging your Phials seen in the top left by using your sword mode. Charging your Phials essentially is adding element or impact damage depending on your weapon type. You can find these under the Phial types, and there's essentially two types. Impact, which adds extra damage and deals KO damage, well suited for monsters that exhaust, flinch, or knock easily. Power element Phials, as you can guess, adds extra element damage onto monster weak points. So the quickest way to charge your Phials is by using your sword attacks, and you have two modes: light slashes and charge slashes. You can definitely do a different number of combinations of these attacks to charge your Phials, but the quickest one is a light charge light. If you have max focus on your build, your Phials will change from white to yellow to red. Red indicating max level, and from there one last input fills your Phials. If you don't have focus level 3 on your build, it's going to take another light and charge attack to get red Phials. I mainly suggest this combo for you guys because it doesn't animation lock your character at any point. Charging your Phials don't need to be continuous, so if you need to dodge or guard, you can with this combo and then get back to charging. Last thing here that I want to mention, guys, is that your Phials can be overcharged, so be aware that you can't just keep attacking forever. If you overcharge, they're going to prevent you from attacking anymore, and it prevents your shield or sword from being able to be charged. So the best way to avoid this is to just get in the habit of refilling your Phials every couple of hits. With these charge Phials, you have several options depending on the situation. First and foremost, I'd say at the start of every hunt, make sure your shield is charged. It's your key to every other combo going forward. After that, throughout the entire hunt, just keep an eye on the shield icon. It'll start to blink, indicating that you have about 30 seconds left, and that's when you should probably recharge your shield again and use your Phials. So for charging, guys, you're basically doing an amped element discharge, but stopping at the last second. So there's two common ways that people reach this. The first, you do a sword slash followed by a shield thrust, and then initiate the amped discharge. During the amped discharge, when your sword and shield are pointing upward, hit the charge button and it'll end up charging your shield and sending you into an elemental round slash instead of a discharge. If you're an audio learner, wait for the clicking sound of when your sword and shield have merged behind your head and then hit the charge button. An alternative method is to morph into your axe mode and then initiate the amped discharge immediately after. The axe mode is slightly quicker in getting your charge off, but the sword mode also deals more damage, so pick and choose depending on your situation. Putting together the last few elements that we just talked about, you can see here the super amped element Discharge. Probably one of the best attacks the Charge Blade can offer. SAED is a discharge of all your Phials at once. Now it doesn't require that all your Phials are charged, but it's usually best if all of them are filled up. Now the attack itself is quite simply the same Keybindings as the charging of your shield, only instead of charging your shield, just let the attack go and all your Phials will be discharged. Now a key tip to keep in mind, the SAED slightly varies based on the Phial type that you're using. Impact Phials release in a straight line, while the power element release in a slight V shape. So for impact, I'd recommend being slightly left or right of the monster's head or tail, enough to get all the Phial damage in a straight line while still being in a position to be able to cancel the attack and dodge. We will talk about cancelling in the guard point section. For power element, try to be more on the side of the monster, so that way you get all your Phials onto the monster whichever direction it goes. Now overall, this attack isn't the most ideal for every monster. Large monsters that can be countered or have high element hit zones such as Diablos, or monsters that can be staggered or knocked easily like Deviljo or Nergi are great to use the SAED on. Smaller monsters are more stable like Kirin, Rajang, or Glavenus. They usually don't have a large enough hitbox or they're moving around too quickly for your SAED to actually get full damage. So instead, we use Phial damage from the Axe mode, which we'll talk about right now. So Axe mode is probably one of the most punishing weapons in the game, and honestly it's also quite fun. But it does require a strong sense of awareness. You'll need to practice iframes and having strong dodging abilities to continuously use this mode. That being said, let's run through some of the basics. Savage Axe mode is the charged form, and we get here from the same places where you charge your shield. When your axe is pointing up, hit the slinger button to morph and you'll change into Savage Axe mode. The axe icon will appear in the top left if it's done properly. And the great thing about charging this is that similar to the sword, it doesn't use any files, so you can go straight into your attacks right after. Now, the charged form differs from the others in that there is no time limit, something to keep in mind. Sword and shield both blink to indicate a time ending, but instead Savage Axe relies on your files being filled. So as long as you maintain your files charged, you'll never actually run out of Savage Axe mode. Therefore, when we practice this and talk about combos, I want you to keep in mind that the strongest axe gameplay comes when you use combos that morph back into your sword mode to enable you to constantly recharge your files. Two things I want to quickly mention before we get to the combos. Number one, if you're running an impact build, keep your shield charged. The main reason for this is because every attack of Savage Axe then becomes a KO attack if your shield is charged. Element builds don't add this KO, and so that's why it's much more accepted that impact builds are better when you're going for Savage Axe only gameplay. The second is that in Axe mode there's an attack called the Dash Slam. This is basically a simple lunge that moves your character forward and overhead slams at the end. However, it is super key for closing in on a monster, especially since Savage Axe has very slow movement. If you target this properly with the KO damage, you can probably get a knock at some point and make huge openings for yourself. Aside from that, once you're close up, you can start a series of attacks focusing on a single body part. Make sure that this area is tenderized for max damage. Rising Slam and Overhead Slams are the two main ways that do not consume files. Keep in mind that these attacks are both vertical and slightly on an angle, so you want to position yourself slightly to the left of the monster for most damage. Left is also a great spot because the element discharge attacks that do use files, they start from the right and swing left. A reminder that Savage Axe mode actually drains your files as well, so even if you don't use all 6 attacks of element discharge, you might still lose files, so always keep an eye on your file bar. Okay, so those are the basic attacks, so let's talk about how to put them into a combo. Combo 1 is what I call the sword morph ending combo, so it's a very common combo for the Axe mode that you basically just keep cycling and reset whenever you see fit. Once you're in Savage Axe modes, it's really just a mix of rising and overhead slams with the occasional elemental discharge. At any point in this combo, you can actually cancel an attack and switch morph back into sword mode. So what you're looking for is that once you get down to 2 or 3 files, or if the monster looks like it's coming for a big attack, you morph into sword mode, guard point the monster, and then use a charge slash to hit yellow status on your files and recharge your files. One common mistake I do see with Savage Axe mode is people try to go back and fill their entire files up. There is no need for that. Even doing half fills with yellow status is enough because more often than not, you are not going to use all 6 files in a single Savage Axe combo. Once your files are refilled here, from here you can immediately go back into Axe mode and keep attacking, or you can store your weapon if you need to reposition yourself. Now the second combo is the AED ending combo, and this one's a little bit shorter, but it uses 3 files straight up. So you do 2 element discharge attacks, then you initiate an SAED, but cancel at the last moment and move into an AED. This uses those 3 files and returns you back to sword mode, where you can quickly do a 1 charge slash to charge up your files. This combo makes good use of your files with a very timely manner, so you know exactly when you need to charge your files. My recommendation is best to often execute this combo after you've done a couple of hits with a regular rising slash or overhead slams, just in case you're able to get that knock. So that's really about it for the basic movesets of Savage Axe mode, and we'll talk about using guard point with Savage Axe mode in the guard point section, which is also a very key skill. Okay everyone, so SAED is your main damage source for most Charge Blade builds, but there are a few other elements that you must always keep in mind. For the next section, I'll be talking about these key things that will really up your gameplay with Charge Blade. So, going back to the sword, I did mention all aspects of this weapon can be charged. Using your charged sword is a great source of damage when SAED is not viable, which honestly will happen quite often, especially in solo hunts. Now, the extra little element or impact damage that comes to your sword is great, but more importantly, this charge gives your sword basically mind's eye. You won't bounce on any attacks, so you can continuously use your sword and charge your phials at any given point. Now, charging your sword doesn't use any phial energy, but it does require your phials to be filled, and you can actually go straight into the sword charge when you are filling up your phials. Once you initiate the filling of your phials, just hold down the light slash button for about a second or two, and you'll see that your sword will start to pull into your shield. Once it's pulled all the way in, that'll indicate that the sword is charged, and you can release, pushing you into a single charged attack. So it's pretty straightforward, and it's something that you can quickly do every time you're charging your phials. Do keep in mind that this only lasts about 45 seconds, which is why I would recommend that you do it every other phial charge. Now, extra attack power and all is great, but have you ever tried countering a monster's big hit and knock them?
Cha real smooth.
How about killing a monster with your shield? Pretty awesome feeling, right? Well, Charge Blade has a guard feature given the shield, obviously. However, it also has the ability to counter attack while guarding, and this is known as Guard Point. By and large, Guard Point is one of the most difficult skills to learn, primarily because of the very small window of opportunity you have to use it. Your timing must be mastered perfectly to be effective, but everyone can learn it. The benefits of Guard Point include stunning or knocking monsters, damaging while defending, initiating your SAED immediately after blocking. You can also hop around without the knockback effects, and you lose 50% less sharpness compared to regular guard. So we'll talk about the 7 main guard point techniques and their applications because I think it's a very crucial skill that every hunter should know. So first up, Sword Morph, and this is honestly one of the most accessible guard points in most situations. So guard point is active at the instant that you start your morph, when your sword is being inserted into the shield. The moment the shield starts to move, guard point is over and you will get hit. So you can see here, I do it a little too early on my timing, so my shield's already moving and I get knocked back. So what you're looking for here is to start the morph the exact moment you're about to get hit. So, as I mentioned, this one has the quickest activation and it's the most accessible in sword mode, so this is your saving grace. Alright, so another guard point in sword mode is the spinning slash. This guard point is active for about 1 second at the end of your spin. So specifically be aware it is when the shield is being pushed out. That's the only time guard point is active. The 2 main ways to really activate this guard point is pretty straightforward. The first, you can see a triple light slash, straightforward, takes a little bit of time though. The second is you can cancel a sword charge or complete a sword charge and follow it with a light spinning slash. In my opinion, this is the more useful application. If you see a monster charging you while you're charging your sword, you can stop and block. So again, this guard point has a longer window, but it also has a longer animation, so it isn't a quick reaction guard point, you have to plan when to use it. There is a third way to activate this, which is basically sidestep and then light attack. But in my opinion, if you can sidestep, you have enough time to do a sword morph, which is quicker than the spinning slash. The next guard point occurs during a transition attack, so the sliding slash kinda adds a little bit of flair to the spinning slash. After a single attack, you have a chance to slide left or right, and at the end you do a spin, again pushing your shield out, which activates guard point. The last aspect of this guard point is that you have to aim towards the monster while you are sliding to make sure your shield is pointed at them directly. I primarily use this mid combo to move around or reposition, and sliding guard point still gives me that protection while I'm repositioning. Now, guard point isn't only accessible from sword mode, axe mode can also use it too, and the elemental round slash here is a perfect transition for us since it can be used from both modes. The round slash is actually just the end of your shield charge, and I demonstrate here solely with the axe morph because it's a little bit easier in the training room. But notice once again the shield push at the end. That is your 1 second guard point window. Also notice, yes, even with this guard point at the end, your shield is actually still charged. So if you're really looking to master Charge Blade, learn to time this shield charge with the guard point. That way you can charge your shields and damage monsters at the same time, maybe even get a knock on a monster during the process. If you're in axe mode, your most accessible guard point is the morph. So you can see here that I morph back and block Diablos with a click of a button. Now, this morph is different from your sword morph. It's closer to the spinning, but it has a smaller animation with the same 1-second window. The next guard point can actually be found when you're charging your Savage Axe mode. Did you notice there's a guard point in there? Bam, a very small window that you have of 0.25 seconds. So this is a very small window for you guys, and its primary use is just when there is a surprise attack while you're charging your SAED or you're charging your Savage Axe mode. Mainly because it does cancel your attack and charge, so it's kind of a waste. And if you're not being surprised, the morph is much quicker from Axe mode. The final guard point I'm going to talk about is the draw attack in Axe mode. Did you blink? If you did, you missed it. This guard point is super handy if you have your weapon put away, and it helps build quick Phial charge while pulling out your weapon. It's an excellent way to jump back into a fight after healing or picking up some slinger ammo. So mastery of this timing is quite difficult, but what you're looking for is to literally time clicking your draw button as you're getting hit. If you wait too much or you're too early, you're definitely going to get hit. The last application I'm going to talk about for draw attack guard point is if you're knocked or pinned. Watch me here fighting against this Rajang. I'm pinned against the tree, nowhere to go. The only option I have is to draw a guard point him as I'm getting up, and I literally do the instant he hits me, saving me from a cart. Last but not least, we're going to take a look at some of the skills that are a must-have, and then we'll take a look at the builds in full. First off, starting off, focus is absolutely crucial. It helps to maintain your charge for a longer period of time while reducing the time it takes to charge up. This is very helpful for beginners and intermediates that are trying to learn how to use and charge up your weapons in an effective manner for every single monster. The only time I think focus isn't really needed is if you're speedrunning, when you need to know and have every move and action calculated in a hunt. Then you don't really need it if you know you can iframe monsters and not waste any moves. Offensive guard, guys, is another huge one, but it's not absolutely crucial. It's great to have if you can fit it on the build. That extra 15% attack is basically free real estate. Affinity is the next big one. It's always generally a good rule to have this as high as possible, but don't let anyone tell you that affinity isn't crucial. There's a lot of sword attacks that you put in throughout a hunt to charge your Phials, and that's extra damage that you can get. For impact builds, artillery is a must-have just to boost your Phial damage. It's the only way to boost your Phial damage, and since you want to get as much KO as possible, the more damage you can output, the better it is and the faster you'll get that KO. Agitator as well is just always a good option when the monster's enraged. You're getting extra damage and extra affinity, so why not? And last but not least, if you're using a power element Phial, obviously you want to have the elemental boost for that specific weapon. The last skill I want to talk about is guarding. Blocking determines your knockback reaction, which can be weak, medium, or strong depending on how hard the monster hits. This is basically the animation of being pushed back and the time it takes to recover. Guard 1 and 2 have 10 points, Guard 3 and 4 give you 20, and Guard 5 gives 50 points. So 5 is usually out there for builds that have no other way of gaining guard points. However, Charge Blade is able to provide you 10 points from a charge shield, and guard point itself also provides an extra 10. Now, there isn't a lot of information on the specific damage values from the monsters, but the math nerds have shown that guard 3 and usually a charge shield and guard point is enough to reduce the damage and have a weak knockback effect. I myself here use guard 1 because guard point enables a user to dodge right after blocking. I use that to my advantage, and with health booster on my weapon, it's usually more than enough. Leading into the builds here, one thing I'm going to mention is that a magazine jewel can be very useful for any build of Charge Blade. The magazine jewel gives you an extra Phial that you can use for extra damage. Even in Savage Axe mode, it could potentially save you from losing your Savage Axe mode charge altogether. So looking at the meta build for Iceborne, Charge Blade usually goes a 4 breaky 1 Damicus. Damicus because of the double focus on the build itself, plus the great jewel slots. Moving on from there, then the 4 breaky, you're really looking for those secret perks. The artillery secret, giving you extra damage to your Phials, and the 2-piece agitator secret, which again is just giving you more attack and affinity. Besides that, the armor itself is not too important. Like, you just put the jewels that we talked about, the skills that you need. Agitator, again with the breaky builds, you've got so much on the build itself. artillery is already maxed out. If you're looking to add some guardian, you have the 4 slots to do that. Or if you want to replace this with the iron wall jewels and that max guard, that is also an option for you. Again, everything else you can fill up. I've got some expert on this crit, attack boost, whatever you feel you really need to make your play style worthwhile. For power element Phials, pretty much you're looking at all the Kiar weapons. They are the best ones, they are the most broken charge blades in the game, and your build is pretty much a full 5 Saphi set, which has been pretty common with Iceborne for all element damage. Keep in mind with the Saphi set you also get a boost to affinity when you pull out your weapon, so you might not need as many affinity jewels on the build itself. That being said, again, make sure your elements are boosted as much as possible and all the other skills that we mentioned previously. And finally we reach Savage Axe. We can't forget about this amazing weapon. It's a pretty similar build to the other ones as well. You're going to need your charger jewels, your magazine jewels again for extra Phials. You're going to need some iron wall if you're going to have to guard point. Artillery as well will be very useful on this build just because Savage Axe does have Phial damage. So if you can increase the damage of every Phial, it's worth your while. The rest of this build you can really play around with whatever jewels you have at your disposal. I don't have a lot of very good jewels here for me, but I do have some Guardian. I'm using a 2-piece breaky, so I have some Agitator on this build. And this build particular, I'm actually using the Kaiser armor because of the Master Touch perk. Savage Axe uses a lot more sharpness than the rest of the other Charge Blade attacks, so it's handy to have. Probably the most important thing for Savage Axe is maxing out as much affinity as possible. Since you are attacking a weakened spot, make sure that you can get 100% crit at all times. And that's the Charge Blade, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Please consider liking and subscribing if you did. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do any other types of videos, if you want to see any other content, anything extra that I should expand on. If you want a more detailed video for guard point, I'm happy to do it. One final thank you I'd like to send out to all the new and old viewers of the channel. I have been away for a little bit, but it's good to be back. Feels great. And we're going all out from here, guys. See you in the next one. Ska Sensei is out.